Welcome everybody to another episode of the J2Hub podcast. This week I'm joined by a chap who's quite well known in the SA industry, and I wanted to kind of delve in a little bit deeper and speak to him, not only about his personal journey, about how he's gone through his kind of progression and where he is today, but I wanted to focus in and speak to him more so about how COVID and how this whole lockdown has affected the whole SA industry. Now, it's no joke, you know, where the government came along and put lockdown into place. I think one of the industries to be hit so hard was the SA industry and, you know, leisure and tourism in general. So I thought this would be a great guy to get on because he runs an SA business with a number of apartments and wanted to get his opinion on how things are going. So Tally Sanga, welcome to the J2Hub podcast.
Thank you for having me, man. Appreciate it.
No worries at all, man. Thank you once again for joining us. So, Tally, I know who you are because I've spoken to you a few times before. I know what you do, but sometimes we have new listeners on the podcast that may not know who you are. So, give me a little bit of intro about you, man. Let me know who you are, what you do, what you're about. What's your journey been, man?
Do you know what, James? I'm just an ordinary guy. I'm nothing really too fancy. I'm just a normal, straight guy. Just like to have a laugh. And, you know, a year ago, I started to get involved. Well, over a year ago, I started to get involved in property. I saw it as a means to an end, really, more than anything. Like thinking, okay, you know, I've always wanted to have my own business, or I've always lived that entrepreneur lifestyle, even though earlier on in my years, I was always in a job. But there's always a part of me where I wanted to just work for myself. So obviously property came along. And you know, it's like when we grow up, we're typically brought into that mindset of, oh, you've got to save 10% deposit, do this, do that. And then it just kind of, I went on a couple of property courses. I won't name them. They're not the best because they just skim over everything. But then I just started to learn it and everything and just go from there. And a year later, I'm here now, basically, like 16 apartments I think I've got, which are a combination of my own and managed. And yeah, so we're just riding this wave now to the end of the year, up to the end of the year when I'm going to hit my target of 24.
Wow, are you on track? Are you on track for your 24 target?
I'm close to being on track.
Okay.
16 at the moment. I've got leads of someone who wants to give me another 2. And I spoke to a lady today who's got a brand new 3, possibly 4-bedroom house that she wants me to manage. She looked at my management about 4 months ago, I think it was, for an apartment, and she was telling me that she's building a house as well. And she literally just messaged me last night saying, look, I've got the house. Do you want to manage it? And I'm like, okay, let's have a look. So go down on the weekend, have a look at that. And then that'll be the first house that I've got in my portfolio.
Oh, fantastic. So far you've got mostly apartments then?
Pretty much, yeah. They're all a mixture of like 1 beds and 2 beds, all dotted around. I mean, I don't know if you know Birmingham very well, but it's not a huge city. So you can walk from one end of the city to the other and really fairly quickly. But they're all pretty much dotted around in certain key areas of the city centre. So it's great for tourism, still great for the contractors and obviously clients as well, which is the ones that I primarily aim for.
Right, yeah. So Tally, tell me about yourself in terms of growing up as a young lad, man. Take us through the journey from, say, when you were in high school and how things progressed. And did you always have an entrepreneurial flair, or were you a bit like me, a bit of a troublemaker, expelled from school and in trouble with the police? So it'd be really nice to hear your background story, because I feel a lot of people come on the podcast and they don't tell us where they've come from. And I always find that's useful, especially for some of the younger guys and you guys that are coming up behind us, in the sense that if they are a troublemaker, or if they've not had the best start in life, it doesn't have to always remain like that. Things can always get better. You can always improve and you can always sort yourself out. So hit me with it, man. Tell me how good you were as a child.
Okay, look, my mum and dad, they brought me up to respect a lot of people. I've been brought up with a lot of respect and I tried to do well throughout school. Was I a troublemaker? Yeah, massively. I got into all sorts of fights and everything. Like for me, it was a situation of either I'm going to hit you first or you're going to hit me. So either way, one of us are going to get hit. And that was kind of like how I grew up in like high school and stuff. Like it was always a fight at the end of the day, and the smallest little thing would trigger me off. I wouldn't go out looking for fights. It would be one of those situations, you know, that old chestnut where, you know, the fight always comes to you. It was always like that. So even going, even like when you turn 18, 19, 20 and you're out in the clubs and stuff like that, and you know, you tend to just finish up your night. I can almost guarantee you 9 times out of 10 it ended up in a fight. I look back at it now and I laugh and I think, wow, I really shouldn't have done that. But in hindsight, it makes you stronger as a person. Entrepreneur-wise, I wouldn't say I was an entrepreneur when I was in high school. I always had this thing in the back of my head where I want to work for myself. I was going to start a business when I was 16, but I'm glad that I never, because with market changes and stuff like that, the business that I was going to go into would have literally just collapsed within the first year. It was like, it was on the realms of like, do you know, like car audio speakers and amplifiers and stuff like that?
Yeah.
It was in that realm, because I used to do that a lot of it. I used to kit all the cars out and do all that kind of stuff. So I was going to start a shop with a friend of mine. Our biggest competition was Bass Junkies, which was literally around the corner. And then of course we get hit with the internet. So I'm glad that I never went down that route, because
I remember, sorry, Tally, I remember that industry being, because obviously I was born in the 80s. I remember in the late 80s and 90s, that was a booming industry. You know, you went down any high street and you'd find 2 or 3 shops and people were upgrading their audios. But I think the manufacturers got quite clever, because they started developing the cars with quite nice audio systems where people were like, do you know what? I don't need to upgrade this anymore.
Yeah, you're 100% right on that aspect. But I think even today, that industry is still very large. It's not as large as it was in the 80s, but it's still very, very big today, because people always like a change. So no matter how good your car audio system is, I mean, let's face it, most typical cars that we have are, you know, Fords, Volkswagens, you know, the typical run-of-the-mill cars where the speakers are nice, the sound system's okay, but everybody wants something different. So when you're an 18-year-old kid, you want a subwoofer in your car, you want loudspeakers, you basically want to be heard all the way down the road. When you've got something like, I don't know, like a Mercedes or something like that with a $4,500 sound system, you don't need to touch it, just leave it. That's it. But not everybody's going to be able to buy a Mercedes with a $4,500 sound system. I certainly can't, and I'm not looking to spend $4,500 on the sound system. So yeah, the industry's still there. It's just not as good. It's not as popular as it used to be, because a lot of the stuff you can buy offline, and you can't compete. Online people can't compete. High street people can't compete with online prices, because the overheads are lower. They've got very, very little staffing costs, packing materials and all that kind of stuff. So it's, and you know, as time goes on, the margins just get thinner and thinner. So yeah, that was one of the things that I was looking at doing when I was like 16, 17. Prior to that, I remember when I met up with Tej, and I know you and Tej get on really, really well. This is when I first started, and Tej was grilling me about things that I used to do when I was growing up. And I remember talking to him about, you know, like when you're 11, like, you know, 10 years old and you get your paper round and it's your first bit of independence.
Yeah. You're
literally the man of the house now because you got a job. That's how I felt. I thought, yeah, I'm a man of the house. I earn my own way now. I'm walking away with £10 a week. My cousin, I was a little bit too young to do paper rounds, so I sort of like worked with my cousin, and I quickly adapted to think that, hang on a minute, there's like 3 or 4 rounds here. And I said, between us two, we can do the rounds in, you know, just as much time between us, so we'll just split it, and we get more money for it if we do all the rounds. So we literally just said to the shop, we'll take all the rounds. And I think back then it was about 4 rounds or 5 rounds or something like that. Don't quote me on the numbers, because I really can't remember that far ago, but it was a reasonable amount, let's say 50, 60 quid a week or something like that, to do all those rounds, including the Sunday round as well, because you always got paid more for Sunday papers. And we split the money 50-50. So rather than me having like, say, 7 or 8 quid a week for 1 round, I was getting nearly like 20, 25-ish or something like that. He then got a little bit older, and that's obviously I got older then, and I started to take the rounds on myself. But back when I started to take them on, there was about there was literally about four rounds more, I think it was, or something like that, 4 or 5 rounds more. I can't remember exactly what the numbers were. And you think to yourself, well, I'm not going to do, 10 rounds of paper on myself. So I just hired 2 little kids to do the round for me. And I paid them away. So I gave them about 15, 20 quid each or something like that. And I sat at home playing on the PlayStation. And I walked away with nearly like 60, 70 quid a week. They walked away with their 15, 20. They're happy. I'm happy. I'm super happy because I got jack shit to do. And I start getting paid. That was my first ever entrepreneurial adventure. After that, it was just like hustling, really, just like working in my uncle's shop, getting some extra money there. I started thinking of ways where I don't have to do any work, but I still get paid for it. So it's little things like, within 2 weeks, I noticed that kids used to come into the shop and they used to try to buy all the sweets and they couldn't afford them. So I knew I can get the sweets at a discounted price. I used to buy £5 worth of sweets, which only cost me about 2 or 3 quid. And I used to get them to bring all the cash and carry in. I gave them £5 worth of sweets, which only cost me 2 quid, 3 quid. And they do all the work for me. And I used to pay them with sweets and stuff like that they couldn't necessarily afford. And it triggered from there. And I always loved like thinking of creative ways to make money where I don't actually have to do anything. I'm super lazy. I'm properly lazy when it comes to stuff like that. I just don't want to lift a finger. In the best possible way. And that's it, really. And then after that, it just came part-time job at Halfords, where I started to learn how to really use my hands. That's when I started getting involved in like repairing bikes, fitting car audio. That's where I learned all my mechanical skills, because I started messing around with cars a lot. And then since the journey of like when I first ever got my license up until I'd say 25, when literally all I used to do was just spend money on cars. I didn't have this concept of saving money or anything like that. My paycheck just went on my car. My paycheck just went on my car. My paycheck went on my car and me having a good time. It never went into the savings account up until I'd probably say about 23. That's when I started really thinking, shit, maybe I need to buckle down and actually think about my life rather than just spending my money on a car, which in the net result's not really going to do anything. And that's obviously when I started saving money. And then I lost a lot of money, a massive amount of money in a very, very short space of time. And that's when I think at that point then, and that's when I had a kick up my ass, because I realized that it's taken me 4 years to save all this money and I've literally just lost it like that.
Tally, do you mind sharing with the listeners what that was?
Yeah, so I don't know, like it still goes on now. It still very much goes on now, but obviously me being me, I'm a lot more savvier than what I used to be before. But like online trading and Forex and stuff like that. I got involved with someone who said, they can manage, because I've always loved doing trading and I used to dabble a little bit into it, but never knew it fully. So this guy approached me and he says, I can do the trading for you. He says, you pay this much and then I'll trade it on your behalf. And it basically came into, I paid him a little bit of money. He traded it and he says, okay, right, this is how much we've got. But we need to do this. And I'm like, okay, then fine. Me being me, I'm not realizing, because I'm having a verbal conversation with the guy on the phone as well. It's not like it's a text message type of thing. It was very personal. So he used to call me, and then it ended up being where like within 24 hours, I think I probably lost about 12.5 grand. Just because he kept saying to me, you need to, if you send me this much money, I can get your money quicker. And the thing that really stubbed me is that he was using all these like keywords and stuff like that. And I was quite smart when it comes to stuff. So I was always Googling it and saying, okay, what is this? What's FCA? What's this? And what's this regulation? And all this. And it was all making sense. Like it was all legitimate stuff. But me being me, I didn't know what anything was going on. And I was just sending this guy bank transfers. And then when I spoke to my bank about it, they basically said, no, what's happened is you've transferred money into various different accounts. And what he's done is he's transferred them into probably 3 or 4 different accounts after that, which means it's almost impossible for us to trace that money back. So you may as well just say goodbye to it. That really affected me, like massively. I remember I was at work one day and I thought, I might work the next day, and it's 60 miles to go back home. And I thought, I'll just stop in a hotel. I could barely even pay for a hotel room because literally I had zero in my bank account. So because he wiped everything out. And then coming back home, it took me about, I think 4 or 5 days to tell my mum and dad.
Wow.
And then I remember we was getting some stuff in from the house, and I sat down with my dad. I said, "I've got something to tell you." And he said, "What's that?" And I said, "I've lost everything." And he says, "What do you mean you've lost everything?" And I said, "I've just lost like, 12 and a half, 13 grand. And the look in his face was not disappointment, but hurt as well. Like thinking, I brought you up to be to understand how things work and stuff. And you being you just got conned, basically. My mom just looked at me and she gave me the mom eyes, like, really?
Yeah.
And I said, "Don't worry, I'll sort it. It's me. I'll figure it out." So, and that's what happened. I figured it out. I got my last little bit of money that I had, invested it in myself, went on to a property training course, which, like I said, it really wasn't all that. But that's when I started to learn more about the whole thing and really just trying to push forward. And I think my mindset changed. I started focusing more on, like being able to do stuff and reading a lot of books, well, listening to books because I hate reading, and just really focusing on what I want in life. And, like the whole chestnuts where you got your vision boards and all that kind of stuff. I've done all that. I don't do it as much now religiously. I don't wake up every single morning and read my vision board because I don't really need to. Or I don't see the purpose of it. I just now, every day I wake up and I just feel more better. I feel happy. I feel more confident. And I think because, of course, the business is growing, now I look back and I'm like, okay, wow, now I wouldn't say I made it, but I'm on the verge of making it. So after all that crap that I went through, I'm now at a position now where I'm a lot stronger than what I was before. That's
a really nice story, Tally. Thank you for sharing that. I myself have lost six-figure sums, and I'm quite open about it. I regularly talk about it because I feel people need to hear the failures, because I think in our industry, you see all the nice shiny stuff, you see the nice shiny cars, you see all the good and the positive stuff, and no one really talks about, how having a massive loss can mentally affect someone, and how it can really kind of mess with your headspace mentally, physically. It can change you as a person. So hats off for sharing that. I think it's nice because no doubt there will be people listening who have lost money to forex traders, because it's it's one of those things where they paint such a lovely Instagram picture for everybody to see, and everyone thinks, who doesn't want to better themselves, who doesn't want an extra bit of money. So I think it's one of those industries that really needs to be tightened up a bit. So no, thank you very much for sharing that.
Absolutely. I mean, regulation is one of those, it's such a highly unregulated industry that, and just as you said, you've got the whole Instagram life, which is, I always have a laugh and a joke about it to various different people, but it's like hashtag Instagram life. And that's just me, because I'm a joker like that. But you get all this glamorous stuff where you got the cars, you got the money, and you kind of think, oh, I want that. It can't be that difficult. But it really is.
No, that's good. Tally, something you said earlier on where you said, where you were taking on the paper round. So you've taken somebody else's product and you're making money off that product yourself. It's kind of strange, because I guess that's what you do partly in SA. You've taken somebody's product and you're making money off of it. Now, what I'm seeing is, speaking to you, there seems to have been a pattern from quite early on as a child that you've realized, hold on a second, I can take what somebody else has, leverage that to create money for myself, even with the whole cash and carry thing that you were explaining, where you were paying someone with sweets to do a job and you're making money on it. So do you think that what you did early on has kind of nicely led you into where you are now?
I think it's helped. It's aided in it. I wouldn't say it's kind of like pushed me in that direction or anything, but I think at an earlier age, because I've always been that kind of a guy where I will always do bits and bobs for everyone. Like even working at, I shouldn't, let's just make sure no one works from Halfords listening to this podcast. But even when it came to stuff like Halfords, where people used to come in, they wanted an audio system, they would say, oh, do you do private jobs? And at first I never used to do them. But then after I said, well, why am I going to line Halford's pocket when I can line my own? So it was always a case where I used to just, it's naughty, but everybody did it. Where I used to do like back end jobs where, I could get 3 or 4 clients on a weekend and or spend literally a Saturday installing their stuff. I walk away with 150, 200 quid just for literally 8 hours of work, 9 hours of work, which was way more than what I was getting at a part-time basis. I would say that it didn't help me, but it definitely guided me in understanding how things work. Like I don't have to do everything myself. But when I started my SA journey, which we'll get into a little bit later, everything that I learned from the paper rounds and the cash and carry and Halfords days, all that was completely out of the window. I had to go back down to the drawing board and back to basics again. So I wasn't in a position where I can leverage my time for other people, and I had to literally grind and do everything myself.
Okay. So tell me, why was it SA for you? Why did you, when you started off in property, what was it that attracted you to SA, and how did you fall into the whole, or how did you get started in the SA arena?
By accident. Literally by accident. So I went on a training course, and my training course was rent to rent, but it was rent to rent HMO. So primarily I was geared up to do HMO. So I knew all the systems on a HMO. I knew how to get the tenants, and I knew how to do everything like that. And then when you're fresh off a course, you're like, your chest is out. You feel large. So you go straight to the agents, and then you start writing letters out to landlords, and you feel so confident that in the next 2 months you're going to get 3 or 4 HMOs. And that didn't happen. It was like 2 months of sending out about 500 letters to landlords, visiting 30 agents, and I got literally no's for every single one of them. And then I kind of like, I remember talking to a good friend of mine, like a really good friend. Almost, he's not a mentor, but I see him as a mentor, because every time I'm stuck or I need guidance, he's always there to help me, or vice versa. When he's stuck on something, or we help each other. So we're just really good friends. But I reached out to Aaron, and he was like, just do this and do this. And he says, what's happening is that you're going in and you're doubting yourself before you've even walked in. So I found this little trick where literally I used to record the conversation between me and the agent on my phone, like on a voice note. And then when I went back into the car, I would listen to it and try to find out where I've gone wrong, where I've stumbled, where I've made a mistake. And after doing that for about 4 or 5 attempts and visiting 4 or 5 different agents, I nailed my speech. I wouldn't say I nailed my speech down, but I knew what I had to say. And I realized that less is more. I was going in at first and giving them everything that they needed to know, but I was giving them way too much information, and they were getting overwhelmed, and they'll just say, no. It's like, no. Then I walked in and I said, and I adapted my speech. I changed the way that I did everything. And that's when they said, okay, now see, because then as soon as you get the agent that does this in their chair, you're like, okay, now I've got you. Because now they're relaxed. And then I realized, okay, now I know what you're doing. Now I know what I'm doing. And then from that day, we got 2 apartments. And that's when the journey started, because it wasn't a HMO. The guy said, oh, I've got 2 apartments. If you want these apartments instead. And I thought, oh, apartments. Okay, SA, I can do that. It can't be that difficult. And then I just said, yeah, all right, cool. Let's just do it. So we just did that instead. And then because I didn't know SA, I had a management agent that would do it for me, so I can learn it in the background. I knew bits of it. Okay. But I've always stayed in service accommodation. So ever since, like, whenever I went away, if I went to like a weekend away or something like that, I'd always stay in an apartment. So I wouldn't stay in a hotel, I'd stay in an SA. So I knew elements of it. I knew the way that the whole thing worked. Like, you get keys from somewhere, you live there for a couple of days, and then it's like a hotel, but except you got more space. And then it was the background stuff that I didn't know, like the systems, the channel managers, the pricing stuff, literally everything else that no one will ever tell you about. All they ever show you is the Airbnb side of it, or the booking.com side of it. So I had a management agent who basically tried to do everything for me, and that failed miserably.
So, Tally, when you got the 2 apartments, you were originally going in to get HMOs, were you? But this guy gave you 2 apartments.
Yeah.
Okay. So you walk out of this place. I'm presuming you've done the deal on these 2 apartments.
I didn't do the deal because I had to go through the numbers and understand it a little bit. So it was still a little bit of a case of, okay, let's just see if this is viable. Spoke to Aaron. Aaron said, yeah, let's go for it. He says, do you know it? And I said, no, I don't. I went, but I can figure it out. And he says, okay, what's the numbers look like? So we got a calculator. We glimpsed over the numbers, looked at the comparables on like Airbnb and booking.com, looked at the markets, look, the location's great. I think it will work. Let's just try it. Originally it was going to be, he has one and I have the other, but because the one was a 1-bedroom and the other one was a 2-bedroom, I'm kind of glad Aaron said this, because it just goes to show that, you know, like your closest friends are always like the people that you look up to in that sense as well. So he said, nah, forget that. He says, let's just do them both together, because if the 2-bedroom works and the 1-bedroom doesn't, I'm going to feel really bad that you put all the money into, or you put your money into something that just hasn't worked. So he said, we'll go into it together. So we went in it together basically, and that's how that stemmed off.
And how so when you got everything set up, were you nervous to start with? Were you like, you know, am I going to get it filled? Are people going to sign up for this, or were you kind of pretty shocked when you put it out onto the platforms and it did remarkably well? It
didn't do remarkably well.
Okay.
It did not do remarkably well. I wasn't nervous because I had a management agent, so I had someone who was going to do everything for me whilst I learn it.
Right.
But it didn't do well at all. First month broke even, barely, just on the skin of our teeth. Second month, I was sleepless nights and I was panicking, thinking, how the hell am I even going to pay for the rent, let alone anything else? Like, I haven't even got enough money to pay for anything else. So wow. I put another £1,500 into it to keep me afloat, because I thought there's no way in hell that I'm going to give up after month 2. That ain't going to happen. And I remember it was about 3 or 4 nights of literally just not sleeping at all. Or very, very little sleep, shall I say, because I was panicking, thinking I can't go into month 3 because I haven't got no more money. If I go into month 3 and I don't make any money in month 2, I can't go into month 3 not knowing that where I'm going to go from. So I literally just made that decision. I think it was about 4:30 in the morning when I was still awake, and I was pondering over different things, and I had my laptop open. I was like, right, looking through all my costs, and I was saying, what's my biggest expense? My biggest expense is cleaning. So how can I keep my cost down on my cleaning? And I sacked my cleaner. Literally just said, I texted her 4:30, I said, look, I appreciate everything you're doing, but right now I can't afford to pay you. So I'm going to have to cut you out. And I started cleaning all the apartments myself.
Wow.
Whilst doing a full-time job as well, just to let you know that it can be done.
Yeah. So you could have very easily have given up in month 2 and thought, you know what, sod this, I'll give these back. This doesn't really work for me. But you took a totally different approach and actually pumped more money in it, reassessed everything, and tried to really make it work. So what was the impact of giving up the cleaner?
That was probably the best decision I've ever made in my life. Well, okay, it's not the best decision, but in terms of the business, it's one of the best decisions I've ever made. It gave me so much more insight on how long it takes to clean an apartment, how much my cleaner is actually going to be charging me. Because I was getting bills for my cleaner for like 60, 70, 80 quid. And I was thinking, wow, that's like 3-4 hours worth of cleaning. I was cleaning them, and I'm not a professional cleaner. I mean, I barely even know how to clean my bedroom, let alone clean, anything like that. But I did it, and it saved me so much more money. So then when I got to the point when I thought, okay, you know what? I understand it now. So I then started to introduce the cleaner, and I said, I told them how much I'm going to pay them, because they said, oh, this is how much we charge. I said, no, that's not how much you charge, because I know how long it takes to clean the apartment, because I've been doing it for 3 months. So don't tell me it's going to take you 2 hours, because it only took me 2 hours and I'm not a professional. And then he realized, and that's when we've come together, and we're absolutely like, we're a match made in heaven, basically. Like, he understands me. He's my eyes and ears on the SA. So he's literally out there doing everything that I need him to do. He keeps on top of everything.
Mm-hmm. So do you think it's important for people going into SA to actually go and physically experience every single corner of the SA industry? Like, go and, work out what it's like to dress an apartment, to book a guest in, to do the whole cleaning, to do the whole turnaround. Do you think it's important for someone running an SA business to go through that process?
Yeah, not even an SA business, in any business. I think it's key for any business owner to understand every aspect of, not, he doesn't have to understand everything to the nth degree, but he needs to have a part in every part of his business. Whether he has experienced people underneath him that does all the day-to-day stuff, he needs to know about that, because if there's ever a problem, he knows how to fix it, or he may have a solution to that problem. Now, if you just go in and, depending on, again, it all depends on the market that you're in as well. But if you just go in and you don't want to experience anything yourself, you won't know how long it takes to clean an apartment. So you don't know whether paying a cleaner, paying a cleaner £30 or £60 is the right amount of money. Because some cleaner might just turn around and say, yeah, it costs us £60 to clean it. We take 3 hours to clean it. If you didn't know how long it takes to clean an apartment, then you're just going to assume that that's okay. You have 6 or 7, well, say 15 changes of £60 to clean, and you're only charging your guests £45 for cleaning. You're paying, you know what I mean? Your profit's coming down because you're paying the cleaner way too much money.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No, it makes a lot of sense. So you went away and you realized what the metrics were for cleaning, and then in that way you were able to work with a cleaner and say, look, I know it takes 2 hours to clean this, so it should be taking you 90 minutes if it's taking me 120 minutes.
Exactly.
And that's a good shout. How do you feel about it when people say, oh, you know what, you should be working on your business and not in your business? Would somebody class that as working in your business if you're actually there cleaning the apartment?
Absolutely, it's working in your business, but any business owner knows that when you start a brand new business and you're learning everything, you can't work on your business. You can't work on a business if you don't know the business. So you have to learn the business to then start working on the business, not working in the business. People get duped into this very, very quickly because, of course, of all the information that's out there, like all these gurus and everything that tell you how easy it is. And it's not like that. You have to work. I believe that you have to work in a business to understand it from 0 to 100, and then you can start leveraging your time, getting other people to do the things that you don't really need to be doing, like talking to guests, communicating with the cleaner. So then you're then actually able to work on the business. And cash flow is massively important. If I knew all the stuff that I know now when I first started, I'd be in a much better position. I'd probably be about 30, 40 apartments by now if I knew what I know now back then. And one of the things that I will say to any newbie or any new person who's thinking of going into SA is, don't assume that you're going to make profit on your first month. Don't assume that you're going to make profit on your second month. You'd probably take about 2 or 3 months before you start making a little bit of profit, unless you're in an absolutely amazing location where it's full of tourism, or you've just got lucky. Those are possibilities as well. But in a city centre where it's very, very saturated, it's very hard to get your listing to pop up at the top. So you don't want to assume that you're just going to make profit from month one. I always say to people, if you're going to go into SA or anything that's rent to rent, make sure that you've got at least enough money in your bank account to support you for 2 months worth of expenses. Expenses being rent, bills, electric, and that's it. Because they're the 3 things that you're going to obviously have, and council tax, sorry. Those are the few things that you're going to have to pay for. So let's just assume that all those costs come to £1,500 a month. Then you need at least £3,000 in your bank account before you even got your apartment listed. So you pay a sourcer, which is going to cost you £3,000. Your furniture, whether you lease it, you're going to have to pay obviously a little admin fee on that. Then you need about 2 months worth of cash flow to keep you afloat for the first 2 months, because you don't want to be running on an empty balance, because that's when you're going to have to keep forking money into it every time you come up with a short month, because SA isn't profitable every single month.
No, that's good to know. Yeah, coming from the horse's mouth, really. There, you've got a considerable number of apartments, and like you said, it's not always profitable. And I think there's too many people out there. There's too many gurus painting this whole picture of that. It's such a glossy world, and you're going to earn so much money from it. And I absolutely, it really gets my back up when I see people posting like, you know, a screenshot of 26 nights booked and they've made, you know, £10,000 or whatever. And it really gets people pumped up. And I think that's wrong, because that doesn't happen every day. You know, you might get lucky with a contractor who's over for a month and he needs a place to live. And he's just happened to click on your one. And I think it's annoying. It's annoying in the sense that it's a false hope, almost a bit like the FX traders, what they do. I can see a little bit of that happening where people are putting out so much false information and getting people to think that it's a glossy world, and, you know, that go and ring 100 agents, you'll get an apartment, you'll put it on Airbnb or bookings.com, you'll make loads of money and, you know, you'll be a property millionaire. It's there's a lot of sugar coating. Yeah. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think every industry, when it's affiliated with what's it called, like money, or the returns of something. So whether it's forex trading or whether it's SA or properties or HMOs, people paint such a glossy photo that it makes you think, okay, wow, all I've got to do is exactly what you just said: get an apartment, stick it on Airbnb, and all of a sudden I'm making £1,000 a month. It never works that way, because the first thing is you got to take it. If you stop for a second and then, you know, rewind back a little bit, put yourself into that consumer's point of view. That's a brand spanking new apartment on Airbnb. Yes, the photos look great, but it's got no reviews. It's only just been listed. As an individual, would you feel confident enough to book it, or would you think maybe I'll just give that a miss for now, because this one over here is the same price, but he's got a few reviews.
Yeah, personally, if it was me, I wouldn't go with the one that's got a review. And I think it's like some of the hosts as well. It's like a host. He wouldn't go with someone who wants to stay there if he had 0 reviews. I think it's a two-way thing. I mean, I've had it before where, you know, I had a new account and I only had like 2 reviews and I wanted to stay in this really nice apartment. And the guys took the booking and they rejected it. And when I asked them why it's been rejected, it was like, because you don't have enough reviews, you don't have 5 reviews or more, and we're not letting you into our space. And, you know, I think it's a two-way thing. But you're right. If you do it online when you shop, you look at the reviews. If there's 0 reviews, you think, you know what, I'm not buying that. Let me move on to the next product. Yeah,
exactly. And that's the mindset of how people are. It's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. But people's mindset is like, okay, let's look at what other people have thought about this product. Let's look at the reviews. Let's look at me personally. I don't. When it comes to buying products, I rarely even look at the reviews, because I see reviews as such a biased opinion. I'd rather just buy it, make my own decision on it, and then if it's crap, it's crap. I'll throw it away. If it's good, great, because you never know. Because again, the thing with the reviews is that some people leave. They find the smallest little thing and they make it such a massive thing that it's never actually anything like that. So you've got to take it with a bit of a pinch of salt. But those are the key things, especially when it's a brand new apartment, is that your property takes time to start ranking up Airbnb and booking.com. So you need about 5 reviews on both platforms for it to start to rank up. When you're under 5, that's where you find it really difficult. The minute that you get over 5, booking.com and Airbnb push your listing further, which means that you're usually at the top. And that's when you can start getting a frequent amount of bookers starting to book. But then at the same token, you've got to make sure that your hospitality is on point, because if you're a bad host, they're going to leave you a bad review. The more bad reviews you get, ain't nobody going to want to book you.
Yeah, no, totally, I agree. Some good insight in there. Tally, talk to me about COVID. I know it's affected the hotel industry, the tourism industry. And I know when COVID was announced, I know a lot of the SA people were a little bit shaky. I spoke to a few people. They were readapting themselves. Tell me what you did. Someone who owns 16 apartments, it must have been a bit of a scary time for you. And how did you adapt to see yourself through that?
So the first thing is I didn't have 16 at the start of COVID. I only had 10 at the start of COVID. So that's the first most important thing.
I mean, 10 is still a fair number, Tally.
But it just goes to show that I was not scared of COVID. I was scared of COVID at first, but I was not scared of COVID after, once I started to understand it. And that's where I grew from 10 to 16 within the last couple of weeks. So I've literally just had I've had 6 apartments now. 5 or 6. I think I'm working on the 6th one now, in the space of the last few weeks. But going back to your question, COVID, COVID for me was an eye opener. It shook everyone up massively. It was almost as if the best way to describe it is, like when you got a tap and you got the tap on and you just turn it off.
Yeah.
That's literally what it was. It was just someone's just come around and just turned this tap off. And you just like, whoa, what the hell? Because the minute that Airbnb and Booking.com got shut down, which is effectively someone closing the tap, you're screwed. Your whole business has failed. I was a little bit smarter because I already had my website, and I had my website running from the year before. So from like September, October, that's when my website was running. And I had Google, and I've had Silverdoor, and I've got all these other avenues that other people wouldn't do, that I did already. So when it came to Airbnb and Booking.com getting shut off, I wasn't that worried because I had my website and I was still getting a lot of direct clients through there. First month of COVID, I was okay because I had a contractor came through me from Silverdoor. For anyone who doesn't know what Silverdoor is, it's a big corporate portal, and they're quite national. But with Silverdoor, you've got to have 5 or more apartments in one block before they deem you as serious, if that makes sense. If you've got 5 apartments dotted around the city, they won't take you. They want one block with 5 or more, and then you can add in whatever you want after that. So it took me about 12 months to get that. They gave me a booking at the start of COVID, just before COVID, actually, before we went into the official lockdown. And it was 2 of my apartments, and it was $5,000 for 2 apartments for the month. They cancelled after 3 days, and they wanted them to be back. I obviously said to them, sorry, we're not doing any refunds, but I'll give you a credit. So I now owe them 23 nights, but they paid me. So obviously I've got the $5,000 in my bank account, which has kept me afloat more than enough. And then it was just a case of, right, okay, so how do I survive now for the next few months? And the way that I survived was basically not thinking of profit. And I know that sounds a bit strange in this type of a market that you're in, because it's always profit driven. I knew that with leisure being closed, we're in a national lockdown, so it means that contractors aren't allowed to go to work. People aren't allowed to go to work. The only people who can go to work are key workers and NHS staff. Now, NHS staff and key workers are just normal people like you and me. They've got mortgages, they've got families, they've got bills to pay. They can't afford £2,500 for a serviced accommodation. But they need their own personal space, because let's face it, they're protecting us, and they're the ones that's actually making this whole virus, calm down a little bit and get to the point where it's all obviously ending. So I literally just looked at my costs and I said, right, okay, what's my absolute bare minimum cost? It's this much. I put that out there, and I said it, and a bit like when you go fishing and you put a bait into the water and you just see if anything bites. No one was really biting. I then said to my landlords, again, I didn't do this as a cheeky aspect. I literally just sent them an email and I said to them, right, I'm not paying you for the next 3 months now. Even though I know that I had to pay them, I just basically said, I'm not paying you for the next 3 months because we hit COVID, everything's in a lockdown, business is closed. And they're like, okay. I waited about 2 or 3 weeks for them to respond back. The minute that they responded back and they said, Tal, we can't not afford you to pay us, but will you do at least 50%? And I'm like, yep, that's fine, I can do 50%. Soon as I've got that go ahead to say that I can do 50%, it means that my costs now are reduced, meaning that I can now get an NHS lady or a key worker in my apartment for £800-900 a month. I've got no linen to worry about because they're cleaning the apartments themselves. I've got no cleaning cost to worry about because they're cleaning it themselves. Little things like council tax, I don't worry about because I'm on business rates, so I never had to worry about that in the first place anyway. Electric bills, I do that every quarter. So I already paid the electric bill for the last quarter. So it meant that for COVID, I didn't have to pay an electric bill for 3 months, and I'll just pay it at the end of COVID. So that's how I did it. And that's how I was able to get literally every apartment filled up for the last 3 months. And it's been the same person staying in there. So I know that they're good, and I've met them all. They're fine. We have regular conversations with each other. I've had one guy who stayed with me since COVID, or since before COVID, and he's the one that's paying me the massive amount of money each week. So he's paying me about £520 a week, but he's still cleaning everything himself. So I'm still making a massive amount of margin on that because he's using the same linen and he's happy with it, and he's cleaning everything himself because he understands the situation, he understands it all.
Wow, what a way to adapt yourself, eh? I mean, use a crisis and kind of almost make it work to your advantage, in the sense that you haven't made it work to your advantage where you're making money out of it, but you're covering your costs, so it's helped you, but at the same time you've helped somebody else. Yeah. Remarkable, mate. Really, really good stuff there.
That was the key thing for me. It's like I look back and I thought to myself, look, how far I've come. It's only nice to always give back, and I always feel that, you know, if you just give back out the kindness of your heart and you don't expect anything in return, goodness always comes back to you in tenfolds. So I was then at a position where I thought to myself, look, I've got X amount of apartments in Birmingham. I can help these people who are actually helping us by accommodating them. If I said this to someone, if I was a multimillionaire, I would give it to them for free, but I'm not a multimillionaire. I've still got a business and I've still got to think about them. So I couldn't give it for free, but the best thing I could do is give it to you for less than what, basically, look, either at my costs or less than what my costs are. That's how I adapted.
No, that's good of you, man. I mean, on the basis of the NHS, I read something about you know, Bobby Singh doing something similar as well.
Yeah.
And I wanted to touch on Bobby Singh because he's been in the news recently, in the sense that you know, he called an NHS worker something, or you know, a god or something. Yeah, I don't really want to repeat it, but you know, the article went viral, and you know, it got him some news press, and he was quite annoyed about it. You know, what's your thoughts on what he said, man? Because you're so close on what you two do. I thought, let me ask you, what do you feel about his situation?
Bobby Singh, I don't know the guy personally. I've never met him. I don't really know of him. I just saw him floating around doing this NHS for free apartments. It's a big Facebook group that they had. And I was a bit dubious about going on there. And I thought, I'm not going on there because, one, I can't afford to give my apartments for free. And I know that there's a hidden agenda here. In my head, this is how I thought of it. I thought what's going to happen is he's going to reach out to his clients and say, oh, we've got this apartment which is free. We've got this apartment which is £300-400 for the month. He's going to pocket the £300-400, and I'm the chump that's going to have to give my apartment for free because I've signed up to his NHS websites for free. I thought that that's how it was, but it turned out that it was nothing like that. So all I literally did is I joined the Facebook group, and I did a post, and I got all my apartments, and because of course it's onyx and it's after gemstones, every single one of my apartments is named after a gemstone, so it's got a story behind it. So I did all the posts, and the way that I did my post, it had the property address, it had how far it was from each hospital. It was all broken down. It says, look, this is exactly how much I need for this apartment. I'm not trying to make any money. I'm just basically covering my costs. If anybody's interested, or if you know of anyone who might be interested, please let me know. And my phone went off the hook. It literally went. It got to the point where I filled all my apartments up, and I still had people asking me for stuff. So what I ended up doing is I spoke to my estate agent, and I said to her, I said, I need some apartments. Have you got anything? Would the landlord be okay with accepting X amount each month? And she said, yeah, that's great. I gave one of her landlords a 3-month booking now, where I've made nothing from it, but he's able to cover his costs, his mortgage, and his service charges. And he's got an NHS person in his apartment, and he's absolutely loving life at the moment because his costs are covered, and I got that for him, and I didn't get anything from it. I didn't want anything from it, other than the fact that I know when I need that apartment, when I'm ready to take it, who do you think the first person they're going to give it to me is me? So as soon as I turn around and say to my estate agents, I want that apartment, she's just going to say, yeah, sure, sign the paperwork. There you go. That's another apartment in my portfolio.
Yeah, just by doing one good deed, you've got a kind of a longer term strategy with it. When you do need to grow your own portfolio, someone's going to reach back out to you.
Yeah.
I saw, you know, obviously on the socials, I saw Bobby was getting a lot of hate for what he said. I mean, I can understand it from his point of view that, you know, he's given somebody an apartment and they hated on him and he wanted to react. And I suppose it's natural just to react. But I don't know. I mean, I'm still torn about what I think about that. I mean, I know one thing. He's a big agent in Birmingham. He does a lot of big things, and whenever I go to Birmingham, I see his face wherever I am. He's very, very well branded. And for me personally, I thought it was a bit stupid of some of the smaller guys really having a dig at this guy, because he could really squash you and finish you if he wanted to. He's a powerful agent. And there was a lot of people having digs at him, and some of the things, I don't really want to name any names on the podcast, but, there's a few people that are really gunning for me. And I think to myself, you don't upset someone who's as big as that, because you should really be thinking about working with someone like that, collaborating with someone like that, who's on a scale that's so massive. I mean, what's your thoughts on collaborating? Do you collaborate with people? Do you work with people? Do you have JV partners?
I work with anyone that I can get on with. I think for me, I look at what can you bring to the table. Now, what I mean by that is it doesn't even have to be money. You don't have to bring money to the table. You can just, what you bring to the table is what I look at. So if you can bring money, or you can bring me knowledge, or you can bring me something that I can use, then yeah, absolutely, we'll do a JV. I'm never shy of working together, because I believe that when you work together as if you get a team of people working together, you can go a lot further, a lot quicker, as opposed to trying to do everything yourself, because it's almost impossible to do every single thing yourself. You need other people around you. I know that because I try to do everything myself, and it gets to the point where you burn out. You burn out very, very quickly. So yeah, doing JVs with people is absolutely massive for me. I wouldn't be in a position where I am now without doing a JV. Because if you think about it, I'm managing other people's apartments as well. That's effectively doing a JV with them, except I haven't got that much of a risk. My biggest risk is my name. And for me, my name is everything to me, because on this whole, I try to make it as if I'm a very transparent guy and I don't BS about anything. So if I'm going to do something, I want to absolutely give it my 100%, and then I will work out where I can change it and where I can go higher. At the end of the day, things don't always go to plan. You can get an apartment and it won't work. But I like to just make it very clear to my clients that I can't tell you if this is going to work. I can just give you my insight, give you my knowledge, and say, this is what I would do. The risk is up to you, what you want to do. If you want to go for it, then go for it. But working together with people is always the best way that I think is the best way to It's the best way to grow, is working together with people.
No, I'm with you, mate. Number empowers, and teaming up and using people's strengths and using your strengths, you get a long way. I'd rather have half of a really sweet cake than have the whole of a cake that doesn't taste very nice. That's how I always compare it.
Yeah.
Tally, it brings us to the end of the podcast. I want to ask you one question which niggles at me all the time. SA, now I know London have done it. They brought in a 90-day rule. Do you feel this 90-day rule might come in nationally? And do you think there's going to be some kind of something coming up in the future where they're really going to start taxing SAs and watching people who are doing SAs a little bit more, and bring in some kind of regulation or some kind of body that watches over you guys?
Honestly, it's hard to say, because no one can ever predict the future. I think they will put regulations on it. I think at the moment is because SA is such a grey area, and what I mean by grey area is that even though it's a business, you can technically get away with council tax, which means that it's almost impossible for them to find out if you're running that as an SA or whether you're running that as a residential household, because you're just paying council tax. Now, I kind of shot myself in the foot because I've got business rates, so I'm on their the hit radar, if that makes sense. So if they do put regulations in, they're going to know that I'm running my apartments as SAs, which means that I'm going to get hit very much with the if they ever put regulations in. If I was running it on council tax, I think it would almost be impossible. It's the same thing that happened with HMOs when they put the licensing in. How many people were running a HMO illegally? And it took them such a long time to get to that point where and even today, they still haven't got rid of everyone. There's still so many illegal HMO runners who haven't got licensing, who haven't got that, because it's almost impossible for the government or the local councils to keep on track of everyone.
And what's your thoughts on the 90-day rule?
The 90-day, I don't know. The 90-day, because I don't really focus too much in London, so I don't really worry about it, if that makes it, because it's got no concern to me. It's like, well, that's London. I'm never going to get an SA in London, personally, because it's too far for me to go. I want to have something where if something goes wrong, I know that I'm there to go and fix it. Or I can, repair it, or, I like to be hands-on to a certain degree. The 90-day rule, I don't think they'll do that in Birmingham. I don't think they'll do that anywhere else in the country other than London. I think London is the only place that they're ever going to do it, and I think that that's where they're going to stay for it. And that's my personal opinion on it. And things might change, but again, even if they did bring that in, there's always ways around the 90-day rule. There's things that people get worried about the 90-day rule, but if that was really a problem, why is London one of the biggest places for service accommodation operators? Because people know.
Yeah, true. People know what to do.
Exactly. If you don't know, you don't know. So I know. Well, I know how to do it. So if Birmingham do bring that in the 90-day rule, then so be it. Bring it on. I'm ready for it because I know how to adapt for it.
Yeah. No, nice, mate, nice. So really worthwhile information there, Tally. If people want to reach out to you, where can they find you, my man?
Facebook is probably the biggest place. Instagram I do use, but I don't use it as often. I probably should. It's just another thing that I don't really, I need to use it. LinkedIn again is another thing that I need to start using, but I just get confused with all this social media nonsense. It's just, when I write something, I just want to stick it on Facebook and then that's it. But yeah, Facebook is probably my best one. So it's just Tally Sanga on Facebook. Okay,
no, good stuff. Tally, just lastly, if you could go back in time, what would you tell an 18-year-old Tally?
Oh, don't get into a fight. No. What could I tell? Hard work works.
Nice.
That's what I tell my 18-year-old self. Hard work works.
Nice. Right, Tally, that brings us to the end of our podcast, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on this morning. Yeah, I knew you were going to deliver some really cool information, and thank you for sharing your opinions on SA, on the way it's going and how it is for you, and really just being so honest and sharing, your experiences of having a massive loss, picking yourself back up and now being in a positive position where you're now heading towards, fulfilling your goals. So I think that just highlights to anybody, your situation can always change. You can always change as a person. And, just because you're down today doesn't mean you're going to stay there forever. So once again, Tally, thank you very much for coming onto the J2 Hub podcast. And, hopefully, no worries, mate. Hopefully we'll catch up soon.
Yeah, definitely. All right, cool, man. Speak to you soon.